Hey, it's Jeff Tamburello, Director of the Southwest Florida RIA, here with Mario Datillo with Real Estate Acquisitions. How you doing, Mario?
Hey, I'm good, Jeff. And yourself?
Good. So tell me about Real Estate Acquisitions. What do you guys do?
Yeah, so my dad and I, Doug, are business partners, and we started the company over 10 years ago. We started in single family homes, buying, rehabbing, and selling them, and kind of worked our way into commercial real estate. So we're a small family owned private equity firm that buys self storage facilities and mobile home communities throughout the Southeast and working on expanding throughout the country. So small family owned company.
I think it's awesome. Your dad started a company with you when you were in middle school.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's a compliment. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you guys first started, what were you doing? What was your deal flow like?
So when we first got started, I was actually the managing partner of a real estate brokerage with a good friend and business partner of mine up in Minnesota. And my dad was in the commercial construction industry. And in 2008, when everything was tanking, started brokering a lot of short sales and distressed assets. And my dad and I started buying them together. And then we formed the company that we have now. And I focused on buying real estate. We focused on buying real estate instead of brokering. And forgot what the initial question was, but that's basically how we got into it. Deal flow. You had said, what was the deal flow like? I mean, we were basically just buying homes from individuals who were in distressed situations. Back in 2009, 2008, I mean, there's just blood in the streets everywhere.
Yeah,
So
there was
everywhere you
plenty of
turn,
distressed homes to buy.
it's more distress than not distress.
I can remember back then I would dump all the REOs into Excel and then sort by city, sort by days on the market. And then we would look at the top 4 or 5 in each city. And even better, that's in Southwest Florida. That's before all the MLSs were talking. So my absolute favorite was when the Naples agent had a Lehigh REO in the Sunshine MLS. And nobody in Lee County was really seeing it, but you could find it on some of the portals, and you could search it from the Naples MLS's page, and that was the best deals that we found.
Oh yeah, they're about as good as off market deals because they were pretty much off market to anybody who should have been looking at them. Yeah.
So tell us about mobile home parks. Why do you guys like them so much?
So we like them for a number of reasons. Number one, it's a very inefficient market. There's not a lot of data to the owners, and I'd say there's probably a lack of sophistication as well. It's always good to be buying parks for people who've owned them for a very long time. And the other thing is it's a consolidating industry. So just like self-storage has been going through for a period of time, you've started to see all the mom and pops selling to the larger operators. The manufactured housing industry is going through that now. It's just in a much more early stage. You've got 3 REITs and more and more private equities getting into it, but there's still an opportunity to buy property at really good prices. And down the road, the exit will be to likely sell to some of those larger REITs or operators that will pay a much more aggressive cap rate down the road. So
yeah, I'm seeing some cap rates out there on particularly like multifamily that's just borderline insanity. And then take the rates up 150 bips and they're almost upside down now.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see. It's kind of hard to understand how some investors are making the numbers work. It blows my mind. And the interesting thing is you're seeing that happen across the board, across all asset classes of real estate, but people are starting to look at mobile home parks, self-storage even more aggressively because they're getting out of the traditional food groups, we'll call them, the apartments, the office, the retail, things like that, in search for better yields. So they're starting to look at, alternative or more unique property types like mobile home parks, things like that.
For me, the RIA is such an amazing insight because we meet so many people. We've got 180 members now, memberships. There's more people associated with the memberships. But, I mean, we met thousands of people over the years. And I always say the richest guys I know own mobile home parks, and industrial real estate.
Yeah.
And they're actually tend to be the happiest too, because particularly those are not, it's not like you've got a duplex in, some area that every Friday you get a phone call that they blew the breakers because, they had every appliance in the house plugged into one outlet.
Right. Well, what I like about mobile home parks specifically is the expenses are broadly or majority of expenses are on the residents because they own their homes. Now, there's a few different business models within the mobile home park world, but our communities are all land lease communities, which means that we own the land, the infrastructure, and the residents own their own homes. So when you're talking about turnover costs that you see in apartments and other property types, your make-ready costs of moving a tenant out and in, we don't have that. Also, the toilets, the sinks, any kind of issues, the AC goes out on a home, that's not a call that we get. The residents handle that on their own, and we're basically just handling the infrastructure, the roads, the main electric, plumbing, things like that, signage, lawn maintenance. But it's basically like owning a for-profit homeowners association is kind of the way I look at it.
You're really the government.
Say that again?
You're basically the government. They have no choice but to pay you or leave with all their possessions.
That's right. Yeah. So it's a good position to be in, and our focus is on building community in there. But at the end of the day, the responsibility of the structures, the majority of the structures are theirs. So
what about, have you guys owned any where you own the mobile homes? Did you do that in the beginning?
We did not. We have acquired a community that was 100% park-owned homes, and we've converted that to a land lease community now. And it's a process. You're not only selling homes, but you're also transitioning from a renter mentality resident to an owner mentality resident, which, it's really difficult, probably around the 50% mark, because you've got half the people that don't care about the maintenance of the homes. They don't care about the maintenance of their yard, which is obviously the tenant mentality, to where then you got 50% that are all trying to clean up their homes, paint, do improvements, cleaning up their yard. So you kind of have this clash in the middle of that transition. And but yeah, so to answer your question, yes, we have bought a community that was all rentals and converted it to land lease, and usually whenever we buy one, it has a small percentage of park-owned homes. We quickly sell off those homes and bring in homeowners.
How many units was it, and how long did that take?
That's actually our smallest community. That's 38 lots with 2 apartments, right about 40 units, and took about a year.
Wow.
And, well, it might actually have been about 14 months before we had the majority of the homes sold off. But again, it was right around that 50% mark. You start to get a clash between the residents, and you kind of.
What's awesome is 50% of the people own something now. How cool is that?
Yeah. Well, now 100% of them own it.
Yeah.
All their homes. Yeah, but in the transition period, yeah, you start to see a very different mentality of people coming in wanting to see things better, because usually what you have in the rental communities, because there are a number of communities that are just all rental homes. It's basically, we call them horizontal apartment buildings, okay? And you just get, renter mentality tenants that, they expect you to come in and do all the work. They expect you to maintain the units, everything, so they don't put a lot of effort into cleaning things up and making it home. So it's neat to see the before and then the after when it's all done.
I'm assuming you guys have managers on site, or do you have a company that manages?
Yeah, so we have on-site managers at every property. Most of them have offices, and if they don't, then it's the manager's home, or it's a home in the community that we've converted to an office. But yeah, the size of the communities requires somebody to be there on site. Yeah.
And do you have an accountant, or do you have an accountant as well that keeps up with all that, or do you guys actually do that internally?
No, we don't internally. We have a bookkeeping company that has 3 CPAs that are totally focused on managing our accounts, and so they're all tied into our management software. So all the transactions that come in, they go through we have a portal that's also tied to our management software that when transactions come in, either invoices to be paid or bills to be paid out, the bookkeepers are all updating the software directly. So we get involved in it, but they're doing the majority of it.
Here's a question, just operational. How involved are you? Do you monthly review the reports, weekly? I mean, I'm just trying to determine, because I've been told that you can almost have passive income with these parks. That once a month, the guy said, you sit down, go over your statement, figure out what, if all your money's there. He puts it, he always calls everybody and gives them some grief to let them know he read it. And then from there, he looks at it next month.
I would say it depends. We've got some communities that are little to no effort. They've been stabilized for a long time. They're clean, tenants pay on time, managers on track. It still takes us touching base with the on-site manager at least a couple times a week. Head of our management company has a weekly call with the on-site managers to keep them accountable. But there is communication involved. From a high touch standpoint, you do have, especially if you take out over something that's pretty rough, you're going to be there a lot. It really depends on the property, the tenant base, everything. But anyone who says that mobile home parks are just, you set it and forget it and collect a check each month, is probably buying either very, very clean institutional grade assets that don't need anything, or they're maybe not giving you the full explanation. It still takes work, but it's definitely not as high maintenance as apartments, because you don't have the turnover. One of your highest costs in apartment complexes is your turnover costs, and it's also a lot of effort. We have very low turnover rate in our communities, probably, under 10%. On a stabilized community, you're looking at under 10% turnover a year, okay? Apartments are going to see a lot higher than that. I think the average stay for a tenant at an apartment complex is about 1.5 years, and you're going to see 30 to 40% turnover a year in an apartment where parks, people live there, 10, 20 years.
Now, do you guys have any age restricted stuff?
No, we don't. We'd probably buy some, but we just haven't found anything that worked at this point. It's a different tenant base. It's different mentality. If we buy one, we will make sure that there's the ability to raise rents. The issue with the age restricted communities is a lot of times people have fixed income. And so when you're on fixed income and the rent goes up and your income doesn't, there's a problem. Where when you have working families that have jobs and are, multiple working adults in the household, they can absorb that small rent increase and keep going. So
yeah, we had Stu on. We did. Well, I'm sure I don't know if you watched it or not. And he talked about he enjoyed the 55 and up parks just a little bit more. But there's one here in North Fort Myers, Buccaneer, and they're like $800 a month are the fees.
Yeah.
And every time they raise, it's amenitized. It's really nice. It's a beautiful community. Sure. But it's when they raise the fees, there's pitchforks, torches. They're hunting people in the night when when that happens. It's, as a guy who is right down the road from it, it's kind of fun to hear all the chatter on Facebook when they because I have a lot of guys I'm associated with through a fraternity that actually live there, and man, do they go crazy when they raise the fees $25 a month.
Yeah, because their income may not have went up equally, so it's really it makes it harder for their lifestyle to keep up their lifestyle when you raise rent. Now, I think there's a valid argument that you're typically dealing with people who are maybe a little less active, they're a little bit more relaxed, maybe not having as much activity when it comes to kids and things like that you got to worry about. But
no 2-day keggers.
Yeah, no 2-day. Yeah, you're not going to have the parties like you have, but in the family communities. But there may be a little bit less work, but for us, our ability to keep up with market rents is probably more important.
And what about with the amount of, I see a lot of money moving into this space. At Steelbridge, we were the brokerage arm of a private equity firm, which I was the analyst of that private equity firm when we were buying bad debt. Mm-hmm. And we were doing really well, and then an insane amount of dumb money came into the space to where there were no more deals, and the only way you could acquire an asset was to put yourself behind the eight ball and hope that some serendipity gets you out of it. Are mobile home parks approaching that?
I would say all property types have either approached or are approaching that. They're, like I said in the beginning, you've got a lot of people searching for strong yield. They don't want to pay a 5 or a 6 cap on an apartment complex, and so they're aggressively looking at everything. I've seen 6 and 7 cap rate parks fairly often recently, and it makes it more challenging. I think the trick is to not get into the hype and not follow that. I've even heard some people who were talking about much higher cap rates a year, 2 years ago and using those cap rates as a bare bones minimum. Now they're talking 7 cap rate. They're even moving down with the market. The problem is the interest rates aren't going down. They're going the opposite direction. So I would just recommend that anybody who's looking at any property type doesn't necessarily chase the trend. Make sure the numbers work on every deal, regardless of what everybody else is doing, and don't buy just to buy.
Mm-hmm.
If you got to sit back and ride out a market or skip a deal because it's just too tight, do it. It's not worth chasing deals.
I'm going to share a slide tonight at the RIA meeting that I got. There's a commercial group called CIP, Commercial Investment Professionals. They meet in the morning early. And they had a guy from the Federal Reserve that was amazing. And he shared his presentation, and he did a slide on LTVs versus 150 basis point jump in rates. And it was really insightful that some of these, you would think a 70 LTV deal is pretty conservative.
Yeah.
Until you crank rates up 1.5%, and then it's almost upside down.
Yeah.
So, and particularly, I'm seeing some multifamily in Florida trading in the 4 or 5 cap range.
Right.
And there's no margin of error in that deal now. I mean, because of the investing is all about having a margin of safety. That's the greatest phrase ever.
Right.
And 1.5% in rates historically is not a whole lot.
Right.
And that's why the next correction is going to be interesting, because you have a lot of large assets that are going to be exposed to where I don't know if mom and popper is exposed, as it really looks a lot like the 87, kind of big commercial assets, the aftermath of which, I mean, that's how Gulf Harbor came about in Lee County. So it's going to be interesting. Do you see, so long term, how many players are in the space?
Not as many as you'd think, larger players. If you start to look at the top 100 owners of communities in the country, you'd be really surprised. I mean, we made it into the top 100 owners of communities without even really knowing it. I
guess I should be calling you sir then.
No, far from it. The thing is there's, because it's in the beginning stage of consolidation, the industry, you've got, once you get into maybe the top 70, you really start to get some high lot counts. But even between 70 and 100, you'd be surprised, how low of a lot count you can get down to and be there. So I guess, long story short, not as many as you would think.
So you probably got 20 entities that own 80 to 90% of the assets, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
At what count, say a lot count for a mobile home park is a REIT? Because kind of the rule of thumb for a multifamily complex, if it's under 250, it's going to have to be something special for a REIT to circle it.
Yeah.
What's that number for a mobile home park?
Right. Now, I don't compete a whole lot with the REITs because they're typically 150 and up. Some of the larger private equity guys are down in the 100 and even sub 100 lot count. But when you're talking about like Equity Lifestyle or some of those other big guys, they're buying 150 plus space parks for the most part. It doesn't mean that you can't operate a smaller park or they couldn't operate. I think it's they're trying to deploy as much capital as possible, and doing a $2 million deal or a $1 million deal just isn't. It's not enough capital deployed on a single deal. They're putting in the same effort on a 300 space community that's $5 million that they're doing on a 100 space park. So
I've got a friend who has a 12 unit small park. What's nice is every unit has its own septic, which is terrible when it breaks, but he can sell them off individually.
yeah,
And but he's unlevered in the A pod like 16%. That's
sure.
a pretty awesome unleveraged return.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So, all right, one final question. If you could go back 10 years, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say probably start out, number one, get educated. I mean, I think the Southwest Florida RIA is an excellent opportunity to get around people who are actively buying real estate successfully, and they're open-minded. They'll give you information, and you can kind of pick their brains and network with them. So number one, get around people who are doing it, get the information, study up. I mean, you'd be surprised how many people, well, you wouldn't be surprised because you probably hear it all the time. There's a lot of people that just jump in and they don't really do their homework. They buy things just to buy it, and then they figure out that they should have studied up. So number one, get the information.
Okay, can I share with you the best way to put that? I've had a lot of those sit down, a cup of coffee, and they made an emotional decision based on the connection with a salesperson for a commercial asset that you just dump in a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet tells you the whole story.
Yeah.
I get at least one of those a year. I had one I'll never forget. He had a spreadsheet with a 10-year pro forma, and it had 6% rent increases and 3% expense increases. Like, you'd have to flip those if you're lucky, but it's never went up for 10 years, 3% or only 6%. Or, I mean, it's just the way it is. It's not ever going to trend like that particularly, but it was, I see that constantly.
Yeah, I think too, knowing what your quote that you always use is kind of know what you're going in to do, or have a plan basically. What's the quote that you always use? Something like,
know what you came there to do.
There you go. Know what you came here to do. If you're buying something and you don't at least have a plan on what the return is going to be, it's not an investment.
Did you guys model yours? Or are you just planning on the smart play would probably be own them forever, or is there a number at which you exit?
When we started, it was a 5 to 7 year plan. Now that we've started acquiring them and we have a better understanding of the industry, we're probably going to hold them for a lot longer. There's no reason to sell them. They're great cash flow, and our goal is to our goal is get to a set value of our assets, and then at that point we'll decide if we just want to coast or if we want to sell or whatever. But we've got a target that we're working for, and it's a 10-year plan.
Now, what are you guys looking to acquire, and how would somebody get in touch with you if they've got a deal?
Yeah. So we are looking to acquire mobile home communities in the state of Florida with 50 plus occupied lots. Outside of the state of Florida, 70 plus. We like the Midwest, Southwest, Southeast. And we also like self-storage facilities primarily in Florida, 50,000 square feet or larger.
You guys just had one get hit with the hurricane. How's that going?
We did, yeah. Actually, we had a self-storage facility get hit by Hurricane Michael up in the Panhandle, up in Panama City, and it got hit pretty hard. And I think what we learned on that is you hate insurance every time you write a check, but you really love it when you need to file a claim. And so Doug, my dad, has been doing a really great job at getting bids from general contractors, working with the insurance adjusters and things like that. But it's been a great learning lesson for us.
Did they deem it a total loss?
We're not. It looks like a total loss to me, but we're not there yet. We're waiting on the determination.
They had a rental property burned down, not burned down completely, but the minute they deem it a total loss, whatever you're insured for, they write the check because I'll never forget because I owed 97.
Mhm.
and I was kind of spazzing because this thing really paid me well. It was really a really high, really good performing asset. And my insurance agent Mark is like, Jeff, you're insured to 152, you owe 97. Will you shut up? I'm like, so you're really going to cut me a check for? He goes, yeah. I'm like, hey, you guys are awesome. Let me,
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you.
sure the next one to 200 if you don't mind.
Right, right. Yeah, so, I would say that make sure that your property is insured well. It's not, on that property and all of our properties, we have loss of business income coverage, which is like business interruption coverage. We've got extended periods of indemnity. We've got layers of insurance, umbrella policies. Liability umbrella policy. We're heavily insured in case something like that happens. So again, we're happy that we had it. Sucks to make the payments, but
Yeah, I had loss of run on mine too. So I still they've really fought me hard on because I was renting it to essentially a nonprofit as a rooming house.
Okay.
And so I was getting really aggressive rents, and I had to get them canceled checks, and they finally paid me. But it was kind of nice to still get the cash flow. I started to rebuild the house, but this was '07,
Yeah.
and it really hit me. What? No, don't do this. And then I was going to keep the lot because for $5,000, I think I had the house removed, the lot scraped. But then I realized it was going to be at least 2 years till the till the property got reassessed as a lot. So I'm going to pay all these taxes. And I sold that East Fort Myers lot I gave it away, I was told, for $5,000 in '07.
But you got the 150 plus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the best deal I've ever done. I thought about, somebody told me I should write a book on it and get on stage, but I think it'd be kind of hard to teach that course.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, make sure your property burns down, right?
It was really taught me a lot. I mean, even on tenants, I found out my house burned down because I got an email from FP&L. I had the utilities on because it was a rooming house, and I got an email from FP&L that the fire department had removed the meter. That's how I found out, because the tenants didn't want to call us.
Jeez.
So I was lucky in the fact that nobody got hurt. I had insurance, but you still don't want to ever deal with something like that. But
yeah. Hey, one other thing you had mentioned, what if I was talking to myself 10 years back, what would I tell myself? And I think the other viewers could probably benefit this too. Surround yourself with people who are smarter than you and better than you at things. A lot of times, we get into things and we think we're just rock stars, right? We think that, you study up, you have a pretty good understanding of things, and then you think you know everything, and so you want to do everything. And I would say, whether it's bringing on a partner that has expertise in a different area than you, I wouldn't recommend getting a partner that is good at the same thing as you, because then you end up overlapping each other. But either have a partner that is really good at what you're not, or as you hire people, find the things that maybe you're not the most effective at or best at, and bring in good people that are, and have those people work with you to make your company grow faster and better. And we've been hiring a lot of people here recently. I shouldn't say a lot, but we've been hiring pretty aggressively this year, and we've brought on some really good people that I wouldn't tell them this to their face, but they're smarter than me.
no, that's what
you'll probably see this video, but they're smarter than me at certain things, and they're definitely got great work ethic, and you'll grow a lot faster and have a lot less stress if you bring in good people to work with you.
I was just listening to a Tim Ferriss podcast. I re-listened to it because it's a really powerful podcast. And the guy talked about, if you want to be successful, you outsource and you scale your weaknesses. Yes. If you want to be great, you scale your strengths, which is so hard to do. Like for me, our virtual assistant at the RIA, I think, is probably better with Excel than me in some cases. And I probably would almost be better off letting her do the reports. And I think she could probably I know she puts a better physical spreadsheet together than me. I may have better formulas because I've got some stuff that's if, but it's kind of hard to realize that there's some points that you probably shouldn't be doing what you think you're good at. So that's a huge lesson. That's a really huge, and if you're not the biggest idiot, you're setting yourself up to fail. You got to stay humble.
Yes, absolutely. So what you're saying, just to clarify, you're saying even if you're good at something, it may not be the best use of your time. So bring on somebody who's better than you at spreadsheets, even if you think you're good at it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, not only with that, you think about it, then how much are you evolving if you're only working on one skill set that you're good at?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there comes a point where if you're an innovator, you should be innovating.
Right.
And once you become good at something, it becomes mundane. And, we always get in our traps. The other day, I was realizing how much busy work I've allowed into my life again.
Yes.
You do that annual sit down. What am I doing? What do I do every morning? And I've realized probably 30% of what I do is just superfluous to make me feel like I'm doing something.
Yeah. If you're doing things that are not taking your company ahead, especially if you own the business, you probably need to have someone else doing some of those things and focus on bigger picture once you can get to that point, and focus on growing your business and doing things that are really going to take you. Some of the mundane things should maybe be handled by other people.
When you think about it, the most successful businesses are who you try and poach people from. Google is insane at how they develop their people. I mean, they've even opened their own high school. I think it's in Arizona, where when you graduate with that high school, with that diploma, you essentially have a computer engineering degree. And so people are like, you're trying to poach guys from Google. You're trying to poach programmers from Facebook. And the companies are successful because they develop their people so well. I mean, there's also a blueprint, the vision and all that, but the true ability to succeed is everybody getting better every day. I know we're way off mobile homes now.
Well, that's all right.
So cool.
But yeah. So otherwise, I appreciate you having me on. And
how would people get in touch with you if they wanted to? And I'll put a link. I'm going to put this on YouTube and on the RIA page, and this will be embedded on your corporate sponsor page too. But how would people get in touch with you if they've got a mobile home park for you?
Yeah, reach out to me via email. It's probably the best way. Mario@realestateacq.com. And love to look at anything. I always say I'd rather look at something and say, no, it doesn't work, than find out that you didn't email me about it and realize that it could have been something we could have done together. So
awesome. Thanks, Mario.
Appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks.